Welcome to Madison College Chemistry Laboratory. Chemistry Lab can be a fun and engaging way to better understand chemistry. Today we will learn about laboratory safety and procedures. Your instructor has given you an outline, but you will need to add your own notes to make it complete. This video covers how to prepare for and work safely in the lab, what to do in the case of an accident, and how to avoid damaging equipment or contaminating chemicals. Lab safety begins before a lab with preparation. Being prepared means that you have read the experiment in the lab manual, including the background reading, safety information, and procedure. Pay particular attention to any safety or chemical disposal information, as well as any activities that need to be completed before coming to lab, such as the pre-lab exercises. You should fully understand the experiment before you arrive. If you do not, contact your instructor to ask questions so you can understand it, get the most out of the experience, and stay as safe as possible. Part of preparation is dressing appropriately for lab. The clothing requirements for lab ensure that you are protected against possible chemical exposure or broken glassware. In general, the more covered your skin is, the more protected you are from chemical exposure. Long sleeves protect better than short sleeves, and long pants protect better than either shorts or skirts. You should avoid wearing bulky clothing or draping sleeves, however, which can get in a burner flame or knock over chemicals. Individual instructors, courses, or experiments may have additional attire requirements. Your instructor will communicate their specific policies with you. Wearing appropriate shoes to the lab is extremely important. All portions of your feet, including your toes, heels, and the top of your feet, need to be completely covered during lab. That means you are not able to wear sandals, open-toed shoes, ballet flats, Crocs, or anything that leaves any portion of your feet exposed. If you prefer to wear sandals or open-toed shoes on lab day, just bring a pair of appropriate shoes with you to change into before walking into the lab. If you have long hair, you will need to tie it back during lab to keep it away from flames or chemicals. If you don't have a hair tie of your own, we always have some available on the front bench that you can use. Regardless of the instructor or course, chemical splash goggles are worn in lab whenever anyone in the lab room is working with glassware or chemicals. Before you come to lab for your first experiment, you will need to purchase a pair of these goggles to use. There are many types of eye protection available in stores. Suitable chem goggles are indirectly vented, which means they do not have holes or gaps in them and will completely enclose your eyes so that no chemicals can splash into them from any direction. Safety glasses with side shields are not acceptable in our labs. The best way to make sure that you have the correct kind of goggles is to buy them from the college's bookstore. If you buy goggles from any other place, be sure to check with your instructor to make sure that they are okay to use in lab. If you do not want to bring your goggles to and from home between labs, each lab has a bin dedicated for storing students' goggles. If you have any special considerations about chemical exposure, such as asthma that is triggered by certain chemicals or a chemical sensitivity, talk to your instructor and we'll do our best to accommodate you. We often work with substances in the lab that are harmful. We have some general procedures that will limit your exposure to chemicals and reduce the possibility that a safety incident will occur. To prevent accidental ingestion of chemicals, no food or drink may be consumed in the lab room. There are no exceptions to this, even water. If you need a drink or a snack during your lab, please step out into the hallway to do it. This also means that tasting any of the lab chemicals is not allowed, even if they appear to be ordinary substances like sodium chloride or glucose. When performing an experiment, students should be standing. This prevents chemicals from being spilled into your lab and reduces potential tripping hazards. To further keep the walkways clear, all stools must be put away either alongside the walls or pushed under the lab benches, and all belongings must be in the cubbies or on the coat rack. To reduce the risk of accidental chemical exposure and other safety accidents, we encourage students to only bring the necessary items like a lab manual or notebook, calculator, and pen to their lab stations. The more items you have out, the higher the risk for transfer of chemicals to those items from the benchtop. You will later handle many of these items outside of the lab, and you don't want them contaminated with chemicals. The same goes for phones. If you need to bring your phone with you to your lab station, do not set it down directly on the benchtop. In general, your instructor will let you know if you need to wear special protective equipment to further prevent exposure to certain chemicals for your experiment. If any special equipment is required, it will be provided for you. Disposable nitrile gloves are available in the laboratory for when they are needed for either an experiment or for extra protection of a cut or other injury on your hand. If you have an allergy to nitrile, we can provide vinyl gloves upon request. Your instructor will inform you prior to the start of lab if gloves are required that day. When wearing gloves, it's important to remember that their purpose is to protect your skin from chemicals. Once chemicals are on the outside of the gloves, you must be careful not to touch your face, clothing, or other belongings with the contaminated gloves. If your gloves become soiled, you can either wash them the same way you would wash your hands, or you may dispose of them and get a new pair. It's also important to remember that if you are leaving the lab room for any reason, dispose of the gloves in the trash before you exit and get a new pair when you return. Lab aprons are available in your lab station. They provide extra protection against chemical spills. Some instructors require aprons for all chemical experiments, and others make their use optional unless you are instructed otherwise. Your instructor will review their policy about lab aprons when necessary. The most important piece of personal protection equipment in the lab are the chemical splash goggles used to protect your eyes. The chemistry department policy is posted near the front of every lab room. It states that safety goggles must be worn by everyone in the lab whenever anyone in the lab is using chemicals or glassware. This means you must wear goggles from the time any student takes equipment out of their lab drawer until either everyone has cleaned up after the experiment or you have personally finished the experiment and are leaving the lab room. One of the challenging aspects of wearing splash goggles is that after you've worn them for a while, they may fog up. If this happens to you, there are a couple things you can do to alleviate the issue. The first is to move safely away from the experiment, turn so you are not facing anyone who is experimenting, and pull the goggles away from your face. Doing this allows drier air to enter the goggles, which can reduce the fogging. This is usually a short-term fix, and the fogging can return quickly. A longer-term solution is to use a special lens treatment on the inside of your goggles. We have dry lens tissues and pre-moistened lens tissues in packets on the shelves in the lab. To use the treated dry lens tissue, you simply dampen a tissue with a little bit of water and wipe the inside surface of your goggles. This will leave a coating that will help prevent the fogging. The other lens tissues are similar, except they are pre-moistened and you can use them right out of the packet. If fogging is a recurring issue for you, we suggest that you treat your goggles prior to the start of each lab. If you need to treat your goggles once the lab has begun, step out of the lab before you remove the goggles to treat the inside surface. In this section, we will discuss how to prevent contamination of our stock chemical reagents and experiments, which is an important part of working safely with chemicals in the lab. Transferring chemicals from the stock or reagent bottle to a weigh boat or other piece of glassware is like a one-way street. Once the chemical has left the stock or reagent bottle, it doesn't go back in. This prevents accidental contamination of the stock or reagent bottle that everyone shares. If you take too much of a chemical, give the excess to another student so that it doesn't go to waste. If you can't find another student who needs that chemical, then dispose of it properly. If you are not sure how to dispose of a particular chemical, check with your instructor and they will be happy to provide guidance. Chemicals can also become contaminated if improperly cleaned equipment are used to dispense them. To prevent this, use only the designated equipment placed in the lab with the chemicals to obtain an appropriate amount for your own use. Droppers are provided with bottles of stock solutions and labeled scupulas with solid chemicals. If you do not see a specified piece of equipment for dispensing a stock reagent, please ask your instructor for guidance. If you need to take a portion of a liquid reagent back to your bench for the experiment, place an appropriate amount of that reagent into a small beaker. You can use a disposable pipette to dispense the liquid from your beaker as needed. If you have excess solution after you have completed your experiment, the best way to dispose of it would be to give it to another student. If you can't, you should dispose of the chemical properly. Tap water has impurities that can cause our experiments to fail. For this reason, we use deionized water, sometimes called distilled or DI, in our chemical reactions and to prepare solutions. Each lab station contains a squeeze bottle of deionized water, and each lab has one plastic gooseneck tap that dispenses this water. Please use this tap when you need to refill your squeeze bottle or need a large quantity of deionized water for your experiment. An important aspect of working safely with chemicals is carefully reading the labels and making sure you're using the correct chemicals in your experiments. Although many chemical names are very similar, such as sodium carbonate and sodium bicarbonate, or sodium nitrate and sodium nitrite, they are different chemicals. Using the wrong chemical can result in your experiment not working, or it could even create a dangerous situation. Droppers are another piece of equipment that can contaminate your experiment or the stock solution if used incorrectly. To use a dropper properly, hold the dropper so that the tip is lower than the bulb. If you tip the dropper so the tip is above the bulb, the solution can accidentally roll into the bulb where it will become contaminated. If a dropper drips when you hold it correctly, tell your instructor and they will get you a replacement bulb or dropper. Remember that we also have disposable pipettes available in the lab for you to use. Use a separate pipette for each solution and then dispose of them in the trash can when you are finished. Even though these are disposable, these pipettes are not used to dispense liquids from stock reagent bottles. You can also prevent contamination by inspecting the glassware before you use it, as you are sharing your lab station with other students during the semester. As you are setting up your experiment, check each piece of equipment to make sure there is no chemical residue left over in the equipment or any chips or cracks that might make the glassware unsafe to use. If you find any chips or cracks in the glassware, tell your instructor and they will replace it for you.
Next, we will cover additional lab procedures that will be helpful in reducing the likelihood of a safety incident. Sometimes we need to use concentrated acids in our experiments. If you need to combine water and concentrated acid, this must be done in a specific order. We always pour the acid into the water and not the other way around. Otherwise, this step can result in steaming and spattering of acid. A helpful mnemonic is AAA. Always add acid. Let's go over the correct procedures when working with hot objects. Whenever you are heating an object and you need to set it down on the benchtop, use a silicone pad from your lab drawer to place the hot object on and protect the benchtop. If you need to weigh an object after heating, wait at least 10 to 15 minutes until the object cools to room temperature. The reason we do this is twofold. First, weighing hot objects on the balance can damage the balance, and second, the reading the balance gives for a hot object is incorrect for the same object at room temperature. Occasionally, an experiment will require you to smell the odor of a chemical. This seems simple enough, but you need to be careful when smelling chemicals to control the amount that you are exposed to. The correct way to smell a chemical is to begin with the test tube about a foot away from your face and with your free hand, gently waft the fumes towards your nose. This ensures that if a chemical has a very strong odor, it will be diluted with air and you won't get a strong dose when you smell it. If you can't smell anything, when wafting the chemical from a foot away, slowly bring the tube closer and closer towards your face while continuing to waft the odor with your hand. Each lab has at least one fume hood that is used if we are working with chemicals that have toxic fumes or irritating vapors. Each fume hood has individual controls for light, compressed air, gas, a sink, running water, and an exhaust fan. The exhaust fan is controlled by a switch on the wall, which will be turned on by the instructor prior to your use of the fume hood. The hoods also have a sash, which should be kept at the lowest height possible when you are working in the hood. Whenever you are not actively working in a hood, the sash should be fully closed. Your instructor will let you know if you need to use the hood for your experiments. Safe handling of chemicals includes proper disposal of them. Your lab manual and instructor will provide information about how to dispose of the chemicals you are working with for each experiment. Some chemicals can be safely disposed of in the sink, while others need to be disposed of in labeled disposal containers that will be available in the lab. Pieces of metal are disposed in the appropriately labeled container, and items that are not chemicals, such as pieces of wood splints, litmus paper, or paper towels, will be placed in the regular trash can. Always check with your instructor if you are unsure about how to dispose of a given chemical. This next section focuses on the procedures and equipment we have in the lab for lab accidents. The most common laboratory accident is broken glass. If you break a piece of glassware on the floor or on the benchtop, use the designated broom and dustpan located on top of the broken glass disposal box to sweep up the broken glass. Once all the glass is swept up, press down on the lever to open the disposal box and dump the glass in before shutting the lid again. If glass falls into the sink, ask your instructor for special gloves for picking up broken glass out of the sink. When you're finished, let your instructor know what piece of equipment was broken and they will replace it for you free of charge. Even when we are careful, it's not unusual to accidentally spill a small amount of chemical reagent. If you spill any amount of any chemical, clean it up immediately. For a solid, we have brushes by the balance. Take an empty weighboat and use the brush to sweep the chemical into the weighboat before disposing of it properly. If you're not sure how to clean up a spill, check with your instructor and they will help you with it. For chemical spills on a person, the first treatment is to flush with lots of water. Each lab room has an emergency eye wash that you would use to flush out chemicals from your eyes. To use it, simply push the bar forward to start the flow of water and use your fingers to hold your eyelids open in the water stream. If you wear contact lenses, you'll have to remove those first to use the eye wash because chemicals can become trapped behind the lenses. Flush your eyes until all chemical traces are gone, which might require 15 minutes or more. However, the proper use of your goggles will reduce the probability that you'll need to use the eye wash. Above the eye wash is a safety shower. The safety shower is used if you've spilled a significant amount of hazardous chemical on your body. To turn on the shower, you simply pull down on the bar. If the chemical had soaked through any clothing, you would need to remove the affected clothing first so the shower can wash the chemical off your skin. Smaller amounts of chemicals on your hands or arms can be washed off using the sink. Each lab room has a phone. Although its location varies, it is always near the instructor desk near the front of the room. If there is an emergency, you dial 911. We sometimes use open flames during our experiments, such as when using Bunsen burners or performing splint tests. This means that there is a possibility that you can set something or someone on fire. If you set yourself or your lab partner on fire, grab the fire blanket. To use the blanket, you simply remove it from the red cabinet and wrap it tightly around the person who is burning to smother the flames. If a fire involves anything other than a person, your instructor will grab the fire extinguisher. Most of our labs have only one fire extinguisher in the room. To use the extinguisher, you need to pull it off the bracket on the wall, pull the safety pin so that the handle becomes functional, aim the nozzle at the base of the flame, and squeeze the handle. This will release either dry powder or compressed gas that will extinguish most fires. Each lab room has a first aid kit. Its location varies, but is usually near the instructor's desk in the front. The kit contains gauze and adhesive bandages for most minor cuts and burns. It's not a good idea to work in a chemistry lab with an exposed cut, so let your instructor know if you need a bandage. Some chemicals such as mercury, strong acids or bases, and volatile organics need special cleanup. The lab has spill cleanup kits that contain materials to help with the cleanup of these hazardous substances. If you do spill one of these substances, inform your instructor and they will use these kits if required for the cleanup. Given the possibility of contamination and the fact that you'll be sharing your lab station with other students, it is important that each student learns how to properly clean and dry glassware before returning it to the lab station in the correct location. Here are the steps for cleaning the glassware properly. Step 1. After you've disposed of whatever chemical is in the glassware, rinse it a few times with tap water to get the excess chemical out. Step 2. Wash with glassware cleaner, which is labeled in the baskets on the pedestal. Use only a couple of drops because it's very concentrated. Test tube brushes are also provided next to the soap for cleaning the inside of test tubes and other glassware with small openings. Step 3. After you've washed with glassware cleaner, rinse the equipment several times with tap water until all the soap is gone. Step 4. Rinse it inside and out a couple of times with deionized water so that you wash away all the minerals that might be left behind from the tap water. Step 5. Shake out any excess water and put the piece of equipment away. Test tubes can be placed upside down on the test tube rack to air dry. Other glassware can be put away wet by placing it face down to air dry in the drawer or cabinet. Once all the equipment from your experiment has been cleaned and put away, wipe down your lab station using a damp paper towel. We do this to prevent chemical contamination, so that the next student who comes in doesn't accidentally set their hands or books in a chemical that might have been spilled during the previous lab. Finally, before you leave the lab room, you should always wash your hands. Hand soap is provided by the sink next to, but different from the dish soap used for glassware. While we have covered a lot of material in this video, we hope you feel prepared to work safely in the lab, using your new knowledge and understanding of laboratory safety. In addition to the policies and tips we've discussed, remember to always use your own two eyes to keep you safe. Be vigilant of what you are doing and what is going on around you. If someone is not following proper procedures, or if you see something in the lab that makes you feel uncomfortable, talk to your instructor so that they can take care of the situation. We hope you're excited to begin doing experiments and working in lab. Please review your notes before your first few labs until these procedures become automatic for you. The more familiar you are with how to work safely in the laboratory, the less likely it is that you will need to use your knowledge to deal with an unexpected situation or accident. Even though we sometimes work with dangerous chemicals, there's no reason to be afraid of working in the lab. If you follow the procedures that we've talked about, you'll be working correctly and safely.